Hello and welcome to the Polymath World channel, and we are talking to another astronaut today, which is really, really terrific. We always love talking to astronauts here on this channel. It's so inspiring. But today is something different because it's not a NASA astronaut or an ESA astronaut. We've got our first commercial astronaut here, and not just any commercial astronaut. We have Chris Sembroski from the Inspiration4 mission, the first ever all commercial private citizen flight. And you can see all about that on the Netflix documentary Inspiration4. But I'm so excited to be joined by you today, Chris. Thanks for taking time out to be here.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here as well and to share my story a little bit with your listeners today.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning of your story. Did you ever, as a kid, have any thoughts of or dreams of being an astronaut? Was young Chris sort of building model rockets and that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, I was, right. I was building model rockets as a kid. My dad got me into that. I remember, in elementary school at about age 8, impatiently waiting for the glue to dry I couldn't wait to get outside and stick an engine in that rocket and see it fly, and promptly lost it in a very tall tree on this very first flight. Yeah, I got involved with math competitions and building model rockets, and I loved all things that dealt with astronomy and physics. But I never thought that there was a chance that I would be the person who would fly to space. And so I'd always was curious about it, wanted to explore. But to me, my brother would be the one who was collecting, baseball cards and sports memorabilia, autographs of famous athletes. And I was the kid who had his collection of 8x10 glossies of astronauts. And that's just really how it was. I never thought I would be one of them, but I always looked up to them thinking that they were some of the best people that were taking us out into the stars. They've done a lot of research. They were training incredibly hard, but that was never something that I believed that I would have a chance to be a part of. And so, but being as close to it as I could be was something that I always wanted to do.
Did you study engineering or science at school and university?
Yeah, so I did. Because I was curious in those subjects. I actually had a chance to go to a science and math magnet school in North Carolina called the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. And I absolutely loved it. It was for my last 2 years of high school as a resident. It was a residential campus. So I got to leave home 2 years earlier than most kids before they go to university. And so, I had a chance to go there, and that's where I really was encouraged by some really great teachers to pursue astronomy and other subject areas of passion. And I really liked the opportunities of getting on top of the school roof and looking up at the stars with just a little bit of extra magnification and realizing there is a lot just out of the view of our normal eyes, and just with a little bit of help and a little bit of magnification, you can start to see galaxies and clusters and colors that you didn't realize were hiding behind those clouds. But I remember that I was constantly encouraged to just kind of pursue some curiosities in high school, but also carry that with me into college, where I did start out as an engineering student, ended up working on a degree in aeronautics. And it was when I was in college that I got to see my first space shuttle mission relatively up close. If you see a space shuttle mission, if anybody remembers watching those solid rocket boosters light, especially on a night launch where the entire night sky lights up from miles away, where you can read by how bright it is. Just the sound and the power of that rocket taking into flight. I knew there was not going to be any other passion for me except doing something that would get me directly involved with that amazing feat of engineering and technology.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we are the space shuttle generation. It was pretty normal for us that there were 3, 4, 5 shuttle missions a year, and you saw people,
Right.
crews of 6 or 7 just regularly going and being part of space. It breaks my
Yeah.
heart a little bit that young people will never see that magnificent machine fly again.
I know. I mean, I remember working at Space Camp and this was when they had a campus that was also in next to Kennedy Space Center. And so we were
Wow.
touring kids through the history of space flight. And that's through the International Space Station processing facility where they were getting modules like ready to take up to the station and bring back. And while it was the time when they were constructing the space station in the late 90s, early 2000s, and
Mm.
it was always inspiring to know that the things that I'm seeing directly in front of me, the people that are wearing bunny suits, crawling in and out, making sure things are staying clean and getting ready for flight, these modules are about to be loaded into the space shuttle to go build that orbital laboratory.
Mm.
Yeah.
It was an incredible time, and it's a different time now. And you become an engineer, life, happens.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing the advert for Inspiration 4 during the Super Bowl. Is that where you
Yeah.
first saw it?
It was. I mean, it was an interesting time, just like the way you mentioned it. I working at Space Camp, I was taking kids through simulated space shuttle missions. The space shuttle was the way to go to space, and so that was what
Mm.
was on our minds. And when the last space shuttle flew in 2011, it felt as if we were entering somewhat of a dark period, more or less, in terms of
Yeah.
human space flight from the United States. And there was a gap, and we didn't really know where we were going to go next and how we were going to get back to space, or if we were
Mm.
going to be able to get back to space in some sort of meaningful way. And when SpaceX launched Bob and Doug on that Demo 2 mission for the first time. I dragged my kids into the living room to watch this on TV, and they just kind of rolled their eyes like, "Oh, here's Dad and his space geekiness coming out again." But it was so impactful and so meaningful to see people be able to fly aboard, a Dragon on a SpaceX rocket, which was a completely commercially built vehicle. And I never would have thought that, from May of that year to February of the following year, that when that advertisement during the Super Bowl aired, that they would be ready that quickly to send an entire civilian crew to space. But yeah, I was sitting on the couch, as most of us do during that Super Bowl event, whether or not our teams are playing, which my team was not playing that year, but the commercials were fun and the snacks were great. And I saw the Inspiration4 commercial come up and saw that you could donate to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and win a trip to space. And I thought the patch looked kind of cool, and knowing that I might just only get a patch out of it, but I would be donating to a good cause, I, just surreptitiously, pulled out my phone and made a small donation. I think my wife was in the kitchen. I didn't even mention it to her because there's no way anything like this would show up. And I just confessed later, yeah, I spent a little bit of money and all I got was a cool patch out of it. But hey, it's a space patch, Aaron. It's cool. And I imagine she would just roll her eyes and smile at me when she saw that in the mail one day. But I promptly forgot about that donation for an entire month. And then it wasn't until the next month in March where I started getting some interesting phone calls one Saturday morning from something called Inspiration4, which I had no idea who that was. My phone was upstairs on the nightstand, vibrating away as I was downstairs tending to our young kids and trying to let my wife sleep as it was her turn to sleep in that morning. But when there's a phone next to your head vibrating away like crazy, I heard from her upstairs saying, "Chris, come get your phone. It's keeping me awake." So I managed to run upstairs, grab the phone, and call this person called Inspiration4 back. And I ended up speaking to someone named Kid. I thought that was an odd name at the time. His real name's Scott Petit, and
Wow.
he was talking to me about this space mission called Inspiration4. Yeah, it was a wild moment. I think that he was trying to get me to give him some personal information from my social security number to, some employment history and other things. And the way he was selling it was bad. I mean, it really was. It's like, what sort of used car warranty am I supposed to be buying from this person on the phone? And I mentioned it to him that, this is some fairly private information I'm going to be sharing with you. And this is kind of a cold call. I'm going to have to do some digging into who you are as well. And that's when he took a step back, I imagine, in my mind. He said, oh, yeah, you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm a former weapons school instructor, retired Air Force colonel, Thunderbird pilot, F-16 instructor. And that's when I raised an eyebrow and thought, well, that's odd. That's not what I expected to hear today. So I figured, why not send in the information? At worst, he'd steal my identity and I could get a LifeLock subscription and recover everything. But really, he called me back later that day and said, hey, I'd also like to get you on a Zoom call tomorrow morning. That way we can get to know you. You can ask us some questions as part of this deep pool of candidates that we're doing a verification on. And so when I got on that call the next morning, I was sitting in my daughter's playroom at the time, as my wife had occupied the office for another call she had previously scheduled with some of her friends, because we're in the height of COVID, and the only interaction with other humans at this point was over Zoom. And so here I am on a Zoom call with this guy named Kid. I get this other gentleman on the phone on the Zoom call named Jared Isaacman, who I did not remember who he was at this point. Come to find out, he's the founder and owner of Shift4 Payments and an accomplished pilot of his own. And I have these decorative butterflies hanging from the ceiling behind me, and very not office-like, aerospace-like decorations all around me, because it's the kids' playroom. And all of a sudden, between Kid and Jared, I see a third person show up, and it's my friend Kyle from college, the guy who I had built high-power model rockets with, had toured Kennedy Space Center with, had seen multiple shuttle launches with, had gone to Washington, D.C. to lobby for the opening up of space to more people. And I thought maybe he was another candidate that was in this deep pool that Kid was trying to verify. And come to find out quickly that, actually, Kyle's the name that we pulled out of the sweepstakes, and he can't accept the prize, so he's elected to give it to you, Chris. So
Wow.
You're going to go to space in 6 months. That deep pool of candidates got really shallow really quick. Yeah. So not the call I was expecting. And next thing I know, I'm sitting there in somewhat shock, thinking, wow, thank you. Wow. Awesome. And I'm on the inside, you're thinking all those different emotions all at once. You're feeling everything all at once, between joy, excitement, exhilaration. You want to jump up and scream. At the same time, I have to go upstairs and tell my wife that her husband's going to be blasted off into space with 1.8 million pounds of thrust at the bottom of the rocket.
Yeah.
That's not something she's expecting to hear today. So I remember just sitting there, freezing for a few moments after the call, just to kind of collect myself and think about what in the world just happened. And yeah, that was all because of watching the Super Bowl just a month prior.
Yeah, I remember getting so excited by that Super Bowl advert and looking it up myself, and then finding out that British people couldn't go, which was
oh no,
which was
you had to be a U.S. citizen at that time. Yeah,
yeah, but being so excited about it, and everything you just said, I felt the exact same thing. That last shuttle flight it felt like the end of an era, but it felt like more than that. like, where is the next flight coming from? And I got
Yeah.
my twins when Bob and Doug flew on the first Crew Dragon. I got my twins
Yeah.
downstairs and I made them watch it too. And I said, this
Right.
this is really significant. You don't know it, but you know, we're back to routine space flight now. Again, it's not
Yeah.
just Russia and China controlled. But
Right. Isn't that odd? I mean, thinking about having to get back to routine space flight, but also it looked as if we were going back, 30 or 40 years back to the capsule era, but at the same
yes,
time realizing there is so much more technology and embedded in this vehicle, and it's so much safer than anything that we've ever flown before with humans.
mm,
That well, maybe there's a chance that this does get opened up for more people, and that the costs are going to come down finally. The opportunities, the innovations that will come from that.
mm,
It represented a lot. It represented the end of a gap in time of a whole decade where, we lost probably a decade's worth of inspiration for new engineers that would want to
yes,
pursue space flight.
yeah.
And Space Camp itself, was teetering on the brink of closure because the excitement, the passion, the people that wanted to go to Space Camp, weren't there anymore. But when
Gosh.
Bob and Doug flew, that changed a lot for a lot of people.
Now, there is not a lot of time between Bob and Doug's Crew Dragon flight and your flight. Is that weighing in
I
your
know.
mind a lot? I mean, it almost seemed like it's okay. We've done it. It's human rated. We can just start doing it. How much is that weighing on your mind?
A little bit. I mean, when someone says you're going to go to space, you don't really question it too much. And then I had a
No.
conversation with my wife, and I realized, oh, she's questioning it quite a bit.
Yeah.
But you do. You think about, Jared signed the contract for Inspiration4 just after Crew One, lifted off to go to the space station. So, I mean, they had only had 2 missions, only one successfully returning before he inked that. And we would be the 4th crewed mission for SpaceX.
Mm,
That felt very SpaceX-like, that rapid iteration. Once you prove something, what can you do to take it to the next level,
mm,
and do so effectively and safely? Uh, I thought about that quite a bit, but not in the, oh my goodness, I need to see thousands of these to launch before I feel safe on board. It was more of how amazing and incredible the innovation has been, and the rigorous safety measures that they've put into place and the testing they've done on the ground rapidly to get to this point. How cool is that? And that's
yeah.
really what I kept thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a healthy way of looking at it. The next thing that I imagine must have been weighing on pretty quickly is you're only training for 6 months. And not only that, you are a completely civilian crew. Everyone is a rookie flyer. Talk me
Yeah.
through those.
Well, I mean, the first thoughts were like, okay, well, who is this crew going to be made up of? I mean, uh, I was a sweepstakes winner. I was pretty much the absolute wild card in all of this. And it just so happened that I understood a lot of the human spaceflight history from the United States, and had, you know, taken people through space camp missions, and had studied at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University about, the history of like the Challenger accident. I was in college when the Columbia had its breakup through the atmosphere, and actually had a chance to tour the hangar where they were putting it back together as part of the investigation, and
Wow.
that was a very sobering experience. But um, seeing all that, I mean, that's what I came to the mission with, thinking, oh gosh, maybe just apart from Jared, am I the like the the ring? Am I a ringer in here who's like just bringing a lot of knowledge and expertise that I don't necessarily see in the general public, or who else am I going to be joining in all of this? And it turned out that we all brought some incredible attributes to make an incredible crew. I don't think I knew exactly what would make up a perfect crew, but through it all and through the process of the selection, uh, the different ways that people were selected for this flight, it formed a crew that you could not have assembled in any other way. We all filled the roles that we needed to fill expertly,
Mm.
and yeah, I mean, we had a childhood cancer survivor who became a physician's assistant at St. Jude, and that was Haley. And we had someone who had tried to become a NASA astronaut in Dr. Proctor, and made it through 99% of the interviewing process and got down to that last yes or no question. And she ended up putting that dream on hold for a decade and started pursuing her passion for art and poetry. And that's what ultimately got her seat on board. And of course, then Jared just having a long time love of everything that flies. And I think he saw Richard Garriott take flight on the Soyuz, and that was his moment of inspiration to think, okay, I want to do that too. And so all four of us came together and brought our strengths, and they were all unique and different. But I think through it all, there was no better crew that we could have put together for this particular mission that was meant to inspire people.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a wonderful crew. And it was, I felt like, yeah, this is an all civilian crew, but actually you could put a check mark by it that says we've got an engineer, we've got a pilot, we've got someone with a PhD, who knows NASA, you've got a medic. Actually, you tick all the
Yeah.
boxes. I loved
Well,
seeing it come
that was
together.
not. Yeah, and we did not intentionally build a crew that way. Yeah, as Jared kept saying throughout the lead up to the launch, it's like the stars aligned at every turn.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, but yeah, that's exactly like you mentioned. We started ticking off all these boxes, not realizing that that's what we were doing.
I loved watching it come together on the Netflix documentary. And yeah, actually, what was that like? Because you're taking this all in training, but you've got Netflix cameras following you around everywhere.
Yeah, which is odd. Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's a bit of a guilty pleasure we take in at home, especially my wife, of watching reality TV, and so
Right.
getting cameras to follow you around a lot and wearing microphones constantly. Yeah, like what sort of reality show are we making? Um, and there's a bit of skepticism in that for a long time as to, okay, what sort of drama are they going to try to portray? And they did an excellent job of really staying true to the story, of showing, the meaningful parts behind things and not just going after, the juicy bits that would make for a
Yeah.
good reality TV late at night. So, it was jarring, definitely jarring at first. Um, and we went through, they provided us a little bit of media training to know how to answer questions, you know, understand that we are going to be representing a great cause in St. Jude. And so that, you want to make sure that you don't tarnish that image that I felt a responsibility and a duty to help support that mission, as it was the biggest driver behind Inspiration4. And so, yeah, I mean, it took a lot of getting used to, but it also at the same time uh, my wife and I had to push back quite a bit too, saying, all right, now I know the whole story that would make for good TV and a good story, saying that, oh, I am a family man, I'm a dad of two daughters, um, but I don't want my daughters in this. We're going to let them come, decide when they're ready to be out there, but we'll protect them for now and not force this upon them. That was something that was important to us, to respect our privacy, because we were not used to being in the spotlight by
Yeah.
any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
My wife being a school teacher, and I'm, me being a behind the scenes type engineer and analytics and data guy. That this was not familiar territory. Jared has done air shows, and he's been in the public eye for a long time, and so there was a lot of familiarity with his family of understanding what that environment is like. But my wife kept thinking about Krista McAuliffe and her family and how the cameras were turn back towards her mom at those most vulnerable moments, and
Mm.
she wanted to know the outcome before before she would be vulnerable to a lot of those circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Like it
it's
didn't
not.
want.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like she didn't want to mourn in public, but she wanted to know that things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought they did a pretty good job. It's a great documentary, and it was putting the emphasis in the right places. But I do remember a poignant moment where you and your wife are looking at the rocket, I think the night before, and it did seem to be sinking in, and I felt a bit like, oh gosh, how would I feel in your situation? But it's also the fact that this is forever. Forever you guys are going to have an element of fame um,
Yeah.
for this happening that you guys have to contend with long after.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not terribly a thing we have to work with all the time, or it's not something that we're constantly facing. But in those moments, every now and then someone will come up or recognize her before they recognize me, of all things.
Right.
And, like, I saw you crying on top of the tower. And, that's when I really empathize with you the most out of anybody. And they're not talking to me, they're talking to my wife. Um, and, yeah, it showed some more of the human elements of what it takes to go to space. And to stretch out on a journey that's unexpected, and an adventure that was traditionally filled with lots of risk and danger, but at the same time, it's come so far that it, you know, I hate to use the word "it's completely safe," but it's way more safe than it has ever been in the past. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
certainly.
But you try to tell anybody that is married to their, or engaged to a significant other, that, oh yeah, this is completely safe. Well, to them, it is or it isn't. You're coming back or you're not. It's black or it's white. There's no like, well, it's less than 1%
Mm.
chance of risk. Well, there's still that chance, and I appreciate that you're taking this risk of your own, Chris. Of sitting on top of this rocket. But when you have a family, the risk of what the after effects are going to be are very much placed on your partner. Because if
Mm.
things go away they shouldn't, then there's a lot of things that will have to happen, and the burden's primarily placed on the loved ones that are on the ground.
Yeah, and you can't help but feel that with that few launches, even though SpaceX do things the way they do, it's still, for all intents and purposes, experimental, even though it's now human rated to fly that
Yeah.
few times to space. I wanted to ask you, was it you or someone else who chose the call sign Hanks?
Oh gosh. Well, that leads right into the training that they gave us, because in order to be ready for anything that could potentially come up, they gave us the abbreviated version of what all the other NASA astronauts go through in terms of safety training. I say the abbreviated version because you take the International Space Station connection part out of it, and so that you can cut off a lot of time in getting ready for flight. But we had other things to consider because we were going to be staying in Dragon a lot longer than other previous missions. And so we had to learn how to live and operate in space within Dragon. And part of that was, we're going to take all of our media calls from inside Dragon as well. And in the course of training, we get prepared to do a fully integrated sim with mission control. And I believe there was a representative from St. Jude standing by as we're practicing, what is it like to do a media call from space with everybody integrated together? Does everybody know how to make the connections from space to the ground, to the phones, to the Zoom interface correctly? And as all good trainers do, you think you're going through a nominal procedure, and all of a sudden you get handed a green card that throws in an anomaly. And at this point, we have our iPads with us, and so we were getting airdrop communication from outside the simulator. And so Jared's iPad makes the little airdrop indication sound, and he pulls it up and reads out loud that Chris is going to be loudly and violently ill during a media event. And I kind of just second guessed him when he said that. Like, okay, you're kidding, right? It's funny. Ha ha. Chris is gonna get sick again. No, seriously, Chris. Here, read it. So, um, we get on this call. We're going through it. It's like, all right. I'll start saying my spiel. And so I've got the microphone in hand, and about a minute into it, I dive into feeling sick, pretending to be, and it's like, oh, hang on, let me pass the microphone over, and I just start making these horrible wrenching sounds and trying to look as sick as I possibly can and be as loud and obnoxious with it as I absolutely could. Mission Control is just dying in their seats. I find out later, just rolling on the floor with laughter, uh, and Haley's being incredibly professional with it as I hand the microphone to her. It's like, well, as you can hear, we are experiencing some difficulties up here, so we're going to have to cut this short today, just as if it's a normal Tuesday of some kind or another. And but anyway, the result of that was for my Oscar-worthy performance. And as Tom Hanks has also portrayed people in space, I got the call sign Hanks.
Oh, that sounds like a great way to earn a really great call sign. Oh, that's terrific. So how was the launch for you?
Oh, the launch. Incredible. Our training was excellent. And so everything leading up to that point, just prior to ignition, felt and sounded just like training. The biggest difference was that, you started to see the sun set outside the window. You saw the crew access arm, you retract, but and you started to hear the different sounds of the fueling of the rocket, about 35 minutes prior to liftoff. And then when the engines lit and we left the launch pad, then you knew it was for real this time. This was exactly, you felt that initial push of acceleration. It wasn't a sudden jolt or a bang. It was just, okay, the brakes are released and you are now taking off on that runway. And that acceleration just continued for the next 8.5 minutes. What a feeling that was. We experienced up to 3.5, 4 Gs on the way up. And the sounds of hearing the turbo pumps pump the fuel through the engines was similar to like a Formula One race car that, you hear it spool up and spool down. And it was just an incredible feeling of just nonstop acceleration. And of course, 8.5 minutes, now you're orbiting the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour, like 25,000 kilometers an hour. And just one of the most incredible experiences I think I've ever had. Yeah.
You guys made the decision, Jared made the decision quite early on that you were going to go to quite a high altitude, sort of about twice the ISS altitude, more like Hubble's altitude. So, that's high. People haven't been that high really since the Hubble repair missions.
Right.
So what, from that height, I've spoken to Michael Foale and other astronauts who've done have done Hubble repair EVAs, and they talk about difference in the view of the Earth from that high. You can sort of see the whole of the planet. What was that like for you? That first overview effect?
You really can. Yeah. I mean, especially they gave us this beautiful window, this bubble-shaped window. Since we didn't need to go to the space station, like you mentioned, they replaced that with this big bubble dome, and you could see the entire Earth without interruption, the entire circumference of it. And for your listeners, I'm holding my hands above my head because it's to us the Earth was always in the up orientation, and so when I was looking up at Earth and I was able to just to rotate my head and see the entire horizon, it took me. It's hard to describe it sometimes. I knew I wasn't going to see lines and borders and those things that we think are so important on the ground. And that all is true. And that thin blue line of the atmosphere on the edge of the surface, that is all the air that we get to breathe, and that protects us from the vacuum of space, and that's true too. Um, but seeing the Earth like that, what I didn't expect was to feel more closely connected to it than I'd ever felt before. Um, Seeing the snow-capped Andes Mountains next to the Gobi Desert in South America, or seeing the reddish-brown interior of Australia next to the coral reefs of the Great Barrier Reef, in those contrasting colors, to even seeing the darker plumes of smoke coming out of the middle of South America. um, I felt as if it was an incredible introduction to our home planet Earth, that we should all be introduced to our planet this way, because now that's a mission for me, is to go and experience all these places I've now seen from space, to now go visit them and be amongst that geography and to meet the people that live in those areas. Like, I felt a better closeness to the Earth, even though I really felt a separation. I could feel that there was this blackness that separated us from the top of the atmosphere, and it was quite a gap. But at the same time, emotionally, I felt really connected to everything I was seeing.
So,
And you're right about there is a difference in altitude. We had to come down to a lower altitude, a lower orbit prior to reentry, and it's a completely different experience. It looks like the Earth's going by faster in the window. You can't quite see as far across the horizon, and one of the bigger differences between our mission and the Hubble missions, the Hubble Space Telescope, is at a inclination very similar to the latitude of Kennedy Space Center. But we were flying at an inclination similar to the International Space Station, which meant that we were able to see farther into the northern and southern poles of the planet than most people have ever seen. And then there was at one point, I think we were able to just see a small part of Antarctica that hadn't been seen by human eyes from space since the Apollo era. Of course, that's different now because the From 2 mission that launched not too long ago from our conversation here, that was a polar orbit, so they were able to experience the poles more directly. But overall, being able to what mattered though in that moment was that I knew that I wanted to take as many pictures of the Earth as I possibly could. It was the same thing for my wife and I at our wedding. It's like our memories are going to fade. We'll forget the taste of the food, but we will always have those pictures to help remind us of where we were. And so I took that to heart on our space mission. And, I had a couple of good mentors to help us practice with the cameras. And, between John Krause, and who does rocket photography, and then Don Pettit gave us an hour and a half long crash course in space photography. It's like, well, if I'll listen to him, definitely.
Yeah,
He's taken some of the most incredible pictures from the space station. And when he was thinking about it, he said, you're not going to be able to match the photography that the space station astronauts get. No matter, you're just not. You only have 3 days. They have 6 months to practice and prepare, and that you're going to be at a higher altitude. You're not going to be able to zoom in better than Google Maps does, even. So he said, "What's different and what opportunity you have here, guys, is to zoom out and capture things that matter to your heart, that speak to you, that evokes some sort of feeling, and just capture some beauty." Then I think that's what you guys can do differently. And so I took those lessons, and I really started taking pictures, just as you mentioned, like the Hubble astronauts kind of indicated. And we get a chance to see the Earth in a new way, in a much broader and wider angle. And so most of the pictures that I took were with that in mind. And like, how can I bring back the beauty of the Earth in a way that not many people have seen?
Yeah. You did a little bit of science, didn't you? I mean, I imagine a lot of it was human guinea pig stuff, but anything particularly
Oh yeah.
interesting?
Oh, right. Well, I mean, that's the other part. Like, we didn't want to be the first off civilian crew and the last. We want to make sure other crews can be successful. So yeah, we did blood draws and immunoassays and we did microbiome swabs of our different areas on our body and of the capsule itself. We were testing out a handheld ultrasound device that you could connect to an iPhone to get really good indications of what's going on inside the body. Um, yeah, we were testing out some techniques that you know were new, and some of the guinea pig aspects of that were, how much training do we need to give someone so that they can do meaningful research in space, and the researchers learned from that aspect as well. But it was fascinating to see how the microbiomes change and our cells change and how things migrate from one astronaut to another in space. And and then of course that led to a whole series of papers being published about a year ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you get sick in the end, or did anyone on the crew get some space sickness?
Um, I think both Cyan and I felt it a little bit. Fortunately, no one, lost their lunch in space on our mission. But I mean, we're told going through training, half of all the astronauts that go to space do get sick in some fashion or another.
Mm.
Haley did take the opportunity to practice her medical skills and was able to give each of us, Cyan and I, both a shot of medicine so that we wouldn't be sick. So that she got to practice that. I still remember the feeling of her jabbing my arm with a needle. She was not gentle with that. She got it right where it needed to be. Didn't want to miss, I guess. So, but it did the effect that I needed, so that I wouldn't be sick in space. Because, I
Mm.
mean, if you're only up in space for 3 days, you don't want to spend half of it just feeling awful. So take the medicine at the earliest sign of any sort of uncomfort or discomfort. And thankfully we didn't have to go any farther than that. And we were able to do all the things we needed to do after a little bit of rest and a little bit of medicine.
Yeah, did you sleep at all? I think if I was in your position, I probably wouldn't sleep very much at all.
I mean, the human body is funny that way. We were busy. We really were. And there was a lot to do. And
Mm.
so at the end of our day, we were tired. We all went to sleep right on schedule. I don't think you need a full 8 hours. I don't think I ever slept the full 8 hours. I was
Mm.
awake after 6, I think, every night. But yeah, we got tired and needed that rest.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Jeff
Yeah.
Hoffman, famous shuttle astronaut, saying that his first trip to space, he just didn't sleep. He slept next to the window of the shuttle and just watched the world go
Yeah.
by. How was
Yeah.
re-entry?
Oh gosh, reentry. Wait, when I remember going through it, it didn't feel all that dynamic at first. And I remember watching a video that I decided to take later and realized, oh, the plasma going by the window that was, below my feet was very much more intense than I remember it from my eyes. And I probably should have been a little more worried than I was, but it was way more intense than liftoff. And I say that because I mean, you can imagine all the energy that takes you that that is required to take you off the ground to get you to the orbital velocity. You got to get rid of all the energy to safely splash down at about 15 miles an hour instead of 17,000 miles an hour. Um, and it we may not have peaked at a high G. Excuse me, we may not have peaked at such a high G force level on the reentry, but we sustained 4 Gs for a longer period of time, and
Mm.
that's right on the border of uncomfortable. and difficult. I mean, 3Gs, you can handle that constantly, practically all day. But when you start pushing 4Gs, you're consciously thinking, oh, I just need to remember to just breathe normal, that this is just temporary. This feels really heavy, but we'll get through it. Um, I do remember feeling excited and seeing the awe of seeing the clouds change direction quickly through the window while I was still able to see out yeah, as this Dragon spacecraft's making its S turns through the atmosphere, and I thought that was really cool. Um, and then, of course, when the parachutes come out and we hear 4 healthy mains, and Jared admits later that his eyes might have sweated just a little bit at that point to see the good parachutes there. Um, uh, I had to rip off my iPad from my Velcro and hand it to Cyan so she could take a picture of the camera views of the 4 good healthy mains. And then splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean, you, you splash down. It feels like someone takes like a plastic bat and just smacks the back of your chair when you splash into the water initially. But it was a wild ride for sure. And with all the bumps and jolts and bounces that they predicted, uh, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, tell us a bit about what you're doing now. You're working as an engineer with Blue Origin, and you're involved in academia as well. What's life like now?
Right. So I did take a job at Blue Origin where I was working to help to get their orbital class vehicle called the New Glenn to flight. And it did so successfully in January of 2025 of this year, which is so happy to see, and knowing that the work on the avionics units that I was a part of functioned correctly. And there's public evidence of that because we saw camera views from space through, and some of that information had to get processed and put through the units that I was working on and touching. So I'm have since though have moved on from Blue Origin, and I am primarily focusing on a lot of outreach and nonprofit work at the moment. On the education side, I get to go back to my alma mater, and I've been teaching classes for them at Embry-Riddle, teaching some space courses for some undergraduate and graduate students, which has been so fun for me. And the students that are part of these programs are from all walks of life, and some are early career, some are late career, and they bring so much to these courses. And I learned probably as much from them as they learned during the course, and that's been inspiring for me. And then I'm also having this opportunity to work with the Deep Space Initiative, which is Sarah Sabry's international program that enables researchers from all over the world to collaborate together, no matter where they're from, provide resources to allow people who are curious and wanting to do research in space topics, to give them the resources to be able to do so in places where they may not have the same availability and access to do that. So that's been a rewarding change for me, and I think that's some of the most important aspects to what I took away from being in space. Not just feeling closer to the planet overall and wanting to be an avid traveler to experience some of those places firsthand, but connecting people together and giving them the similar opportunities in whatever ways that I can make happen, with the end goal in mind, thinking that what we think is really important in our day-to-day lives, that a lot of those problems and things that we struggle with constantly, they fall away to insignificance when you get at that broader view of the Earth, and how we really are all in this thing together. And Nicole Stott says that we are we should be treating each other and this planet as crew, as we are not just passengers on the spaceship of Earth. And it's absolutely true. If we can travel around the entire globe in an hour and a half, it's really not that big of a place.
Yeah. Sadly, I have to wrap up now. But what in 1 minute? What is the legacy of Inspiration 4? You know, the first ever commercial crew. Obviously, that will live in history. But what are you really hoping will emerge from it?
I think that Inspiration 4 did a lot in terms of changing the narrative of what an astronaut looks like.
Yeah.
What does it require someone to be able to go to space and do so successfully? The old days of having to have the right stuff and being the perfect physical specimen or having advanced degrees is not a requirement to just be a part of space travel. And it really showed that we can support people in numerous ways, in ways that we haven't done traditionally, to allow people to experience what it is to see the Earth this way, and to even venture out farther towards the moon and beyond. I think it has inspired so many kids and adults to think differently and think bigger than what they have ever thought in the past. And so kids like me who growing up thought that, well, I won't be able to fly to space, but I can maybe work towards something close to it, can start thinking more directly that, no, I really do want to be someone who travels into space. And those dreams really can come true. It may not always be in the path you expect, but I think we are building those paths to space.
Yeah. And just like Bob and Doug's flight, your flight's going to be really, really important in history. It's really amazing to think about, but it's just the beginning. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Absolutely.
Chris. It's been amazing to hear your story, and I could ask you 1,000 more questions. But I really appreciate your time today.
And I could sit here and answer them all day. I really appreciate having the chance to talk with you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Look forward to catching you again sometime then.
Excellent. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more amazing conversations with incredible researchers who are changing the world we live in and driving humanity forward. Feel free to check out my Instagram at polymath_Sam or go to my website at www.sam-mckee.co.uk.